So I don't know if you know this, Georgia's got a big runoff coming up January 5th, and they are already, Will, investigating voter fraud. We haven't even hit Election Day yet.
The Secretary of State, who's had some criticism of late, but he's already putting out statements that if you are voting in Georgia when you're not a resident of Georgia, that's a felony, which makes sense.
What is happening with this issue where they are already investigating this runoff to have potential voter fraud that we've already said is pretty extreme. You're talking about people registering to vote that aren't even residents, that aren't even citizens.
Some of these progressive groups, apparently, it appears, and what they will be investigating is whether or not they were sending some registration forms to get ballots to people that were not residents of Georgia nor planning on becoming residents of Georgia. And there's an interesting tie. One of these groups has ties to one of the candidates. The New Georgia Project, the Reverend Warnock is a former CEO of that organization.
Interesting.
So we'll see how this shakes out.
There's plenty of fun to have, plenty of problems to happen. And the fact that they're already happening again and the election day for the runoff hasn't even occurred.
What is interesting is that he said that the New Georgia Project sent voter registration applications to New York City in potential violation of state law. We have some sound from the Secretary of State, Raffensperger. This is Bite 5 about these third-party groups and what they're looking at. Let's play that.
These third-party groups have a responsibility to not encourage illegal voting. If they do so, they will be held responsible.
It was definitely a warning that if they are not using their checks on their system, if they're not making sure that the people they're soliciting to register to vote ahead of this election are not going to be in good faith voters, that they're going to hold the organizations responsible. And I think that's a key distinction. They're putting it out there. They're saying, we're going to make sure that we don't have as big of a mess up as we already did. And we'll see how that plays out.
All of the power, a lot of the power is in the Senate. And if the Senate swings one way or the other, you're going to have massive change. If there's no checks and balances, if it's just a full-fledged Democrat agenda on all branches, that will be it could be a mess.
I think Than said on the broadcast yesterday that it's a national election, even though it's for 2 Georgia Senate seats, because of the impact that it will have all across the country.
A really sticking point for me, looking at that, going the fact that you could register, you could turn 18 from the time from the general election to the runoff and then register. There's a lot of parents, I feel like, pulling some shenanigans. And I don't know if I'm for that. I think that this should be a runoff of the general election. The whole registering to vote for this feels very strange.
Right, when it's a continuation of something that happened in the general election. It shouldn't be a whole new group of potential voters that didn't even have the opportunity to vote. Because you brought that up. Some people are, if they turned 18 after the general election.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people did.
They're like, okay, we're going to go register to vote.